Hi, my name is Rocio, and today I'll be showing you how to make French onion soup. Now, this soup is good all year round, but it's especially good in the winter months and during the holiday seasons. Now, this soup you can actually make ahead of time. You would just reheat it the day that you want to serve it. There's a last step in the soup where you broil the cheese and the bread on top. Now, this step you would save for right before serving. Speaking of storage, I want to talk about food safety and the importance of storing your foods the right way. You want to make sure you're handling your foods in a safe way so that you're lowering your risks for bacterial growth. The best way to do this is to follow the 4 keys to safe food handling. These 4 keys are clean, separate, cook, and chill. Clean refers to cleaning your surface areas as well as your hands. Separate is separating your raw meats from your other foods to avoid cross contamination. Cooking is cooking at the right temperature and avoiding that danger zone, which is between 40 degrees and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And finally, chill, which basically means refrigerating your foods right away. Now, if you follow these 4 keys, you're going to lower your risks for foodborne pathogens such as Listeria, Salmonella, Campylobacter, etc. Next, I want to talk about knife skills and how to properly cut an onion. Now, this is French onion soup, so I want to demonstrate with half of an onion, and I have my knife here. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're holding the knife where your index finger and your thumb are at the bottom of the blade, so you have complete control, and you're wrapping your 3 fingers around the handle. Okay. Now, when you place your hand on the onion, you want to do it in a claw position by tucking your fingers in so you're not cutting your fingertips, okay? And you start on the side here and you just slice down. We're going to do thin slices for this recipe, okay? Just so that when they're caramelizing, it happens in a way so that everything is uniform, okay? So you go all the way across. Once you get to this part where it's a little bit smaller and harder to hold, you can always lay the onion flat and then continue slicing through, okay, until you get to the end, like so. All right. Now I have cut the rest of the onions here. You're gonna need about 2 pounds of thinly sliced onion. Now for this French onion soup recipe, you're gonna need 2 pounds of thinly sliced onion. I'm using yellow onion. You'll need half a teaspoon of dry thyme and 1 bay leaf. I have that here. You're gonna need 9 cups of beef broth. These cartons come with 4 cups each. So I have two cartons, and then I have 8 ounces here for the extra cup of beef broth. You'll also need 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. That's for when we're adding the onions to the pot. You'll need 1 ounce of dry sherry, 1 ounce of cognac, and 2 ounces of dry white wine. You'll need 6 slices of Italian bread and 6 slices of Swiss cheese. This is the last step when we broil on top of the soup, the bread and the cheese. And then you'll need salt and pepper to taste. Now in a Dutch oven pot, I melted 2 tablespoons of butter, and I put in the 2 pounds of thinly sliced onions. Now in this process, the onions will reduce slowly and start to caramelize. Now this is the process of non-enzymatic caramelization, non-enzymatic browning through caramelization, which is basically a reaction where the carbohydrates or the sugars in the food are heated and the water is removed from the sugar, causing the browning effect. Now, in this type of reaction, it is a non-enzymatic browning because there is no enzyme, there's no involvement of enzymes in this process. So now we're basically going to stir constantly. According to the recipe, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for the onions to fully reduce. It may take a little bit longer. Usually it takes between 45 minutes to an hour even. So you kind of have to just keep a close eye on it, stir. You can walk away for a little bit, but just don't leave the kitchen to make sure that the onions don't dry out or burn. This is going to take about 45 minutes. So as you can see, about 30 minutes later, the onions are completely reduced. They are caramelized and they have that rich brown color. So now we're ready to add the rest of the ingredients. So now we're ready to add the rest of the ingredients. We're gonna start with the 2 tablespoons of flour. We're gonna add that to the pot. And we're gonna stir that for about 2 minutes. So while this is combining, after the 2 minutes, we're gonna then add the thyme and the bay leaf right here. And we're also gonna add the cognac, the dry sherry, and the dry white wine. So this soup is great because apart from it being very tasty, onions are really good for us. Onions are rich in vitamin C and B vitamins. They're also rich in potassium, and they are loaded with antioxidants. And antioxidants are great because they support brain, liver, and heart health. And it's also good for reducing inflammation. So as we're stirring this, we're ready to add the rest of the ingredients. So we're going to add the dry thyme and the bay leaf right in here. I'm going to continue to stir. And we're going to add the combination of the wine, the dry sherry, and the cognac. And we're going to let this simmer for about 10 minutes. So now we're going to add the beef broth, and it's 9 cups. So each carton is 4 cups. So I'm gonna add the first carton here. Second one here, this is gonna make 8 cups, okay? And then finally that extra cup. And then we add half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, or whatever it is to your liking. If you want to add a little bit more, a little bit less. Also, if you wanted to cut down a little more on the sodium, you can always use a low sodium beef broth. And we're going to let this simmer for about 20 minutes. So now that the soup is finally done, I am pouring it into these individual ramekins. I'm using 12-ounce ramekins. These are oven safe. You want to make sure you get dishes that are oven safe because we're going to put this in the oven and we're going to broil the bread and the cheese that sits on top. So you want to make sure that your dishes are oven safe. I've already poured in 2 ramekins. So I'm going to pour into this third one. The measurement is about 1.5 ladles. This ladle is an 8-ounce ladle, so it can fit enough in the ramekin. And I'm placing it on top of a baking sheet so that when I'm transferring my soups into the oven, it's happening in a very safe way. So just gonna place your bread on top of the soup. This is Italian bread. All right, 3 pieces of bread. I'm gonna do it 3 at a time just to be safe. And this is the Swiss cheese, so we're gonna put 1 slice over the top. Now you can use whatever cheese you'd like. I'm using Swiss. Then you're gonna put the baking sheet in the oven and broil for about 2 to 3 minutes. So this is the final product. After 3 minutes of broiling, you can see that the cheese is melted on top of the bread. It looks really yummy. So before we try the soup, I want to talk about the different heat transfers that happened throughout the cooking process. So the first type of heat transfer was the conduction heat by the Dutch oven pot heating up, causing the onions to reduce and caramelize, and then creating that non-enzymatic browning caramelization reaction. The second heat transfer was a combination of convection and conduction. With this type of heat transfer, it allows for the broth to heat up, causing a circular motion within the pot, allowing for the soup to heat up completely. And the last heat transfer that occurred was the radiation heat with the broiler. As the broiler was radiating the heat directly onto the soup, it allowed for the cheese to melt. So we have all 3 heat transfers happening in this recipe. So now we're gonna taste. Let's see here. That's really, really good. Very rich, and you can feel like the deep flavors and the herbs. It's really good. I hope you make this recipe. I hope you try it, and thank you for watching.